We're recording. Blessings, everyone, and welcome to the Gnostic Union with your host, me, Bishop Nathan Wilson, and here, Deacon Lorenzo. Sorry, David, my bad, I already messed up. Good start. We're meant to see Lorenzo, so if he joins, he joins. So, and David, who's soon to be a priest by our next discussion. So, give him a warm welcome. And we're going to be discussing a subject, and David here is going to announce it.
Yeah, so hello everybody. I am Deacon David with the Gnostic Union. Very proud to be here. And today we're going to be talking about a discussion I had sort of came to my spirit is, we live in a world today that is, depending on where you are in the world. I'm here in America. I'm a black man in America. So we live in polarized political times. We have the rise of, people say the rise, quote unquote, rise of Christian nationalism. Me being in America, I kind of always kind of feel like it's been there, but we see more of a push to kind of get it. So ultimately, this discussion is how do we as Gnostics, belonging to various, coming according to the flesh and blood, human beings, belong to specific ethnic groups that comes with all the religion and the spirituality and the customs and the culture that comes with it. How do we as Gnostics navigate being proud of where we come from, owning where we come from, but at the same time, too, keeping that middle ground with the Gnostic message, which is ultimately this really isn't our home in that, in that aspect. So how do we manage? How do we go about that? I know for me, oh,
I'll let you continue, my bad.
oh, well, I know for me, like I said, this subject is really important to me because, like I said, and when I say being a black man in America, I know that this is probably pretty much around the world, but just to make my experience very specific because I don't want to like keep a broad, everybody, but so very specific to my experience here in the United States of America. Being a Gnostic and coming into this in this knowledge in the Gnosis on the path of Gnosis, coming from a space where I was like I think I've spoke about this last time, coming from a space where I was originally, born and raised a Christian, wanted to be a pastor, left Christianity, got more into African spirituality, which is a broad thing. It is not one specific thing. There are many religions within African spirituality, many spiritual thoughts and philosophical thinking and stuff like that. But so specifically coming out of into the Hebrew Israelite left that and then transition into ancient Kemet and Kemetic spirituality, which still holds a high degree within my life, and going into especially being a Seth, well, going more into the Sethian school of Gnosticism. Ancient Egypt plays a part. Historically, it does. But coming into that, and then going back and revisiting the teachings of Jesus and around my peers who are mostly into African spiritual religions, and not only African spiritual religions but fundamentalist Christianity here in America. They see me and they're, you posting this Jesus stuff, and what's going on? You, are you a Christian again, or are you? And I was like, no, I'm a Gnostic. I'm going more to an earlier form of Christianity, if you will. Even though I hate saying that, but just for lack of a better term, earlier Christianity before it became the Catholic and Orthodox Church. We see this thing where and I was inspired by here the Nag Hammadi scriptures. One of my favorite Sethian Gnostic texts is Austrianos. And in this text, and we see this thread throughout a lot of Gnostic texts. We even see a little bit in the secret book of John, where in the secret book of John, in the beginning, John goes to the temple and a Pharisee comes to him, and then this is after the resurrection of Jesus, comes to him and was like, where is that teacher that you was following? And one of the things that really I paid attention to, and he said it was very specific. He said that he's filled your ears with lies, and he's turned you against the traditions of your ancestors. And in the book Zastrianos, we see this thing where Zastrianos is having this thing in his spirit and his soul is where he's questioning reality. He's questioning what's going on. Like a lot of us that go and find our way into any school of Gnosticism, we have different cosmologies, different different theological things here and there, but we do kind of see a bridge within, more of a commonality in Gnosticism of what, then we kind of see with all the multiple denominations now of Christianity. We still see this thing that something's not right. We begin to question something. Our culture, the where we come from, the way we've doing things, it just doesn't land. It's not doing it for us no more. And we see this in Zastrianos. He says, and I'll read it here. In Zastrianos, he says, now this is the non-Achaemenid scriptures. Of course, you can get this on Amazon. It's widely published, edited by Marvin Meyer. But we see here, and it says, seeking to understand these things after the custom of my kind, or it could be translated my people. I will offer them up daily to the God of my fathers. I will praise them all since my forefathers, ancestors who saw it found. As for me, I did not stop seeking a place of rest worthy of my spirit, where I would not be bound in the perceptible world. Then, as I was deeply troubled and gloomy because of the feeble mindedness that surrounded me, I dared to act and to deliver myself to the wild beasts of the desert for a violent death. So we see Zastrianos. His quest for knowledge almost drives him to deleting himself in so many words. But one of the things I really liked about this is that he still says that I still did the customs of my people. I still offered up daily the offerings to the gods of my forefathers and the ancestors. There's nothing new under the sun, as the Bible puts it. And I think sometimes we like to think that our world is so different than the ancients that came before us. We look back to the ancients. We scour all these books. I even got this the other day, the other Bible. We scour all these ancient texts and trying to find out, like, what's that secret ingredient I'm missing? What's that secret thing that's just going to revolutionize my mind and bring me into gnosis? And we have to realize that it's the same world. We live in that same world. The only difference is, I feel like, is that we have better technology. We can become a little bit more lazier than our ancestors were afforded to. But still this quest for gnosis, this thirstiness that we even see in the New Testament, the canonical Gospels, where Jesus is always saying that I'll give you, I'm the water of life. I'll come to me. If you're thirsty, you will quench your thirst. We see this, and that's because during the ancient times, rivers and fresh water sources were fundamental to survival. Now we really don't have to worry about that. You know what I'm saying? You can live right next to a beach with nothing but an ocean of salt water, but still have clean water to drink, and you don't have to worry about it. But in the ancient world, that was a very different type of thing. You had to live, whether it was the Nile River, the Mesopotamia River, or the Jordan River. You see that these rivers always hold a very like reverent, holy thing to these people, because that was literally the source of life for them. Not to get too off into that, but going back to the original thing, Zostrianos, he's starting to question, but he still knows that he's doing the things of his ancestors. He's doing the things of his forefathers. And when we start to question, okay, what's going on? Why is this world the way it is? And we go into this message of gnosis. How do I, as a black man in America, that has this very specific history with slavery, chattel slavery, the black church, growing up in all these things and holding on tightly and dearly these things that even give me a sense of identity, a sense of belonging. Because let's keep it real, we're human beings. We want to belong. I don't care how much, in my opinion, I don't care how much gnosis or how we go off into the stars. There's still a anchor that we have to have here on the earth to a certain extent. We just have to keep it real. My tattoos and stuff like that, I make it very known that I know my history here in America as a black man. But how do I, as a Gnostic now, or how am I on this road of Gnosticism? How do I say to myself, I see my people suffering or going through, I won't say suffering, but I see my people fighting for something. I see the polarization of thought. I see all these ideologies, and I see all these ways of thinking, and I see this is wrong and that's right, or that's right, this is wrong. But you still feel like a stranger. And again, we see this concept through the Gnostic text of feeling almost like a stranger to the world, even though you do both come from, you didn't just come out the ground nowhere. You know, you came from a lineage. You have certain type of blood running through your veins. Um, I believe in the Gospel of Thomas, it even says that you know the children of God are, and I'm paraphrasing. It probably doesn't say exactly like this, but in so many words, is that the children of God are like children in a field that is not their own, and it really resonated with me because you know even though we belong to this world, we aren't of this world. We feel like as Gnostics. So, how do you guys feel belonging to coming from very specific cultures? How do you bridge that gap between I know I'm a human being living on this earth? Because as Gnostics, I hate this. There's this misconception that as Gnostics, it's oh fuck the well, excuse my language, but forget the world. I don't want nothing to do with it. Forget all y'all. I'm just gonna go off in the mountains and meditate for the rest of my life. It's like no, we still navigate life, this world. We still navigate our cultures and our people and strangers and all you know everything. We still go to work. We still have to collect a paycheck. We still have to. So how do we navigate that as Gnostics?
Great question. And welcome, Bishop Lorenzo. He was just driving at the moment. Glad to see him. And culture, beautiful thing, isn't an inherent delusion, but a vessel for which the divine spark can express itself. Even Jesus had to be the Galilean Jew
Right.
in order to bring his message. So he taught the goal was participation, not identification. And even nationalism itself is a very ancient thing, as we were discussing before recording. It's been entwined with politics, with religion itself, and of course, war, and also bringing people together, as well as division and a distraction of the people. So even Jesus says to fast from the world,
Mm-hmm.
fast from the noise of it, the political noise, the nationalist noise, or even the noise of the culture to find rest within. So a kingdom within you, another world within you that is separate from this world that in turn can influence this world. And even with Gnostic schools of thought, we talk about the archons, and they were
Right.
also represented by political rulers. Not all the time bad, sometimes bad or even influenced by evil beings that were called archons, or even they were the archons themselves, or even influenced by fallen angels or spirits, depending on the ancient Gnostic school of thought. So even Yadabaoth or even Yahweh itself.
Mm.
So we even had, well, today we have actually Orthodox priest, which I've witnessed, and even Catholic and Protestant priest praying for the rulers of today, the politicians and their service, or
Mm-hmm.
word I'm thinking about. There's a term of office that they pray for.
Yes. Yeah.
But Jesus didn't pray for Caesar and his soldiers over the poor. And sometimes they choose to honor these public figures over the poor or over
Mm.
the community that they in turn pretend to represent or forget they represent.
Mm.
We live in this world, but Jesus also states to be in the world, but not of it. And as you mentioned, we have a home beyond this place too, pleroma, heaven. But also this is found within us too, which is a beautiful thing that can in turn impact this world, so we can find rest in it. So Jesus also challenged the religious hierarchies of the time and the political rulers of his time. So he was one that rejected people's dogmatic approach over that of a spiritual relationship with God.
Mm.
So living worldly, live spiritually. Instead of being rich and hoarding your money, give some of it, help the people around you. So Gnosticism is the model of us that honors the divine awareness over social identity, which is another beautiful thing. So even our national heroes, despite what culture they belong to, they can in turn serve a symbolic purpose that in
Mm.
turn fuels our own growth and development. So how can a Gnostic truly belong to any nation when we belong to God or we belong to the Pleroma? It's our
Mm.
home. We'll return to at the end of the day. This body belongs to the earth. Our soul belongs to
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons why one of the reasons I gravitated towards and felt the call towards the Gnostics message is because when I look at when me this is me personally when I look at the world and I'm seeing all these religions, all these cultures, all these spiritual, everybody has their own creation myth, everybody has their everybody can't be telling the truth, and I don't believe that everybody is lying. So then, what really is that primal source, that spark, that thing that gave rise to all of this? And for me personally, I found that within the Sethian Gnostic mythos and cosmology to kind of better understand what it is that what we're dealing with when we're navigating the world. And but to go back to what you were saying about what Jesus was, politicians and no spiritual leaders and stuff like that praying for, you know, Jesus said when he was on trial, my kingdom is not of this world. And one of the things that the disciples, and this is just in the canonical gospels, one of the things that the disciples kept trying to get Jesus to, they kept asking, it's like, when are you coming and destroying the Romans? When are you coming and making Israel, the top, you're supposed to be the king of Israel. You from the line of David. When are you coming and doing this? It's one of the reasons why I think that Peter had this sword, because these were rebels. I'm making no mistake about it. These weren't just these, that they say that they were fishermen. And I do believe believe they were fishermen like that. But
Sons of Thunder.
they were rebels. They were ready for a fight if a fight has it,
Mhm.
because you do when you dealing with colonization, in this case the Romans, in their world, whatever like that, dealing with Hellenized Judaism, where other groups of Jews like, nah, we don't want no mixing with no, we want our own thing. The other group Jews like, nah, ain't nothing wrong with no Greek. We could mix a little Zeus and Hades in with our stuff, ain't no big deal. And it's like, oh no, we don't want that. No, so long story short, my kingdom is not of this world. When you say something like that, and when we as Gnostics say that our home is in the pleroma, that we're just here right now to spread gnosis or to do a job, there's this misconception that when we're saying that, we're saying forget the earth. Fasting, to me, fasting from the world is not fasting from the earth. And I make a distinction. I personally like to make a distinction between the earth and the world. Because just because I say that my kingdom is not of this world, or this is not my home, does not mean I'm advocating for destroying the rainforest or
Exactly.
pollution and killing animals, and all deleting animals and all that kind of stuff. Not that's not what that's not what that means. Or now, don't get me wrong, you did have some Gnostics that believe it. I actually, when I got this book, I was familiar with Marcion, but I never really studied Marcion. And this particular, the other Bible, the author here goes into a little bit of the history of Marcion's belief. And I was like, the more the extreme approach of no sexual thing because you don't want to reproduce. That's a thing in in certain Gnostic schools. Me personally, I don't think that that's realistic. For me personally, but so I don't make no mistake about it. There are Gnostic schools that do kind of have like that, what more of that nihilistic type of thing. But I think
Yeah.
that that's more of a thing of the soul. I don't think it's literally we're going to say, since we're not of this world, then just whatever happens. Y'all can drop a bomb, atomic bombs everywhere. We don't care. I don't think that's really what what Gnosticism is talking about.
Welcome again, Lorenzo. Good to see you.
I think
You
it's
might have froze
frozen.
because he's driving. Just
Yeah.
feel free to join in whenever you like. If you want to say a word or two, feel free whenever, Lorenzo. But yeah, you're exactly right, David. 100%. There is a separate inherent difference between the world and the earth. When we speak about world, we're talking about the material world, not the actual earth itself. When even in some, depending on the Gnostic schools of thought, some even believe that the earth was inherently good, but the material world corrupted it. So that's a distinct difference. Where others believe this entire earth or cosmos was created by Yaldabaoth and the Archons, or even that it was already here because they were too dumb to do anything with it, and they just happened to put some vessels on it and put thrones on some planets. But again, that was some vast different schools of thoughts. But
Mhm.
we also have to remember that we go back to Judaism. There were Gnostic Jews as well,
Right.
and in turn had a different idea, even believing that, and some Jewish mystics as well believed that the angels created this earth, and some of
Right.
those angels were fallen angels because it was corrupted, and others didn't. Others believed that in turn an adversary, either Belial or even Yahweh itself, corrupted the earth.
Mm.
And until this material world is here, but it's still distinct from the earth again. So there's parts it couldn't fully corrupt. So it depends on the schools of thought, which is very fascinating. With the Markaria of the first century BC era, possibly the Essene ancestors, some argue to be an Essene group, but it's unknown with the origins really of the Essenes. It's very most likely that they arose out of Egyptian philosophy.
Mm.
So with that particular group, they believed that the demiurge created this earth, but under the will of the monad. So
Right.
the monad knew everything would be corrupted, but would eventually return to its original spiritual state.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, so people seen the problems of the world and they thought, how can a perfect God create this? And this philosophy is going really far back. But again, we had the other groups that believed that this earth was originally good and it was just balance and even the light and darkness of it. But the material world, again, separate from that, was what was the due state of its fallen nature. So even the belief of souls, our souls were inherently different to that of the animals. Animals having a soul. Some groups didn't even believe animals had a soul and they were a byproduct of the archons and the outer off messing around before trying to create a replication of man,
Mm.
which is confused with us. So we're meant to be the first human beings. So it's interesting with the schools of thought within Gnosticism. But again, when we look at the political rulers of their time, they would persecute the Gnostics, and thus you would see them not wanting to participate of such. But some even stated with, say, Nil, he used the term with the Carpocratians being communistic because in turn they would sell all their possessions following Jesus to be a part of their community.
Mm.
So they in turn would either say, look, sell everything and come here and give it all to the church, or don't come at all. So they
Right.
believe they inherit the true teachings of Jesus. And in turn, we now see that same philosophy within the Orthodox priesthood and even Catholics when we see monks going out in silent retreats, selling off what they used to have. So that philosophy itself came from the Gnostics, which in turn we see today replicated in Protestantism, even the belief of being like Jesus. This is very Gnostic, to be like Christ, but they don't understand that concept. So
Mm.
that's a cool thing. So again, it's being in the world, but not of it. So again, you're having your own personal connection with God. You're not finding a savior figure outside of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Instead
And
of,
I think too that before we go, because I don't want to make it too long, but I think because
yeah,
some people may bring up that which I wrote about that about the rich man that Jesus says will sell all your stuff, give it to the poor, and come follow. He just couldn't do it. He left. And I know, and I believe that story is saying something deeper. I don't think that personally that was something that Jesus was saying that if you really want to follow me, you need to give up. I think that he was seeing something in that specific man's heart, and that's why he said that to him. But it can apply to us in the sense of giving up your, to me, giving up everything that we have that is worldly. I think sometimes we think that worldly just means material possessions, and and it doesn't, because Nicodemus isn't chastised. Joseph of Arimathea isn't chastised for being rich, and they were wealthy men according to Scripture. So clearly, it's speaking to something a little bit different, deeper, not different, but deeper, when it comes to leaving the world behind, separating yourself, giving up everything you have. Because if you have children or a family, you gonna starve, let them starve to death because you trying to follow something higher that, let's keep it real, don't we really don't even know it exists or not. We have faith that it exists. We have an experience, but it's still filtered through the human experience, if that makes sense. So I don't think that, when it comes to leaving the world behind, our cultures, our people, people's ways of thinking, like Zastrianos said, he read the feeble mindedness that was around him. I don't think that it's saying that, oh, everybody's dumb and I'm only because I have this quest for knowledge, I'm the right one. Everybody else is stupid. That's not, I don't think that's what that's really saying. I think that the Gnostic message is you can be a part of your cultures. Me, Black American, of course, descending from West Africans. Like you telling me, English, Scottish, Aboriginal blood. We can, like you said, participate in these things, but we realize that eventually you're going to hit a wall if you aren't careful. And that wall is once I die and I'm stripped of this flesh, and I'm stripped of this mind, what am I? Am I a man? Am I a woman? Am I gay? Am I straight? Am I Republican? Am I a Democrat? Am I this? Am I that? What really is these identities that we've taken on, that we hold on to so hard, that we lose sight that, are you really any of those things at all? So that's ultimately like why I wanted to bring this, because like I said, we do live in a world right now that is very polarizing when it comes to identities and ideologies and ancestral things and stuff like that. And I'm not advocating, no, if your ancestors, if your ancestors have cultures, customs, and traditions, and you feel very passionate about keeping those custom cultures and traditions, um how your ancestors put them down, I'm all for that, honestly, because I feel that way about certain things within the African diaspora. But as a Gnostic, I do realize that it isn't the entire truth, and I think that that's what I personally feel. I think that as Gnostics, we should pay attention to that. It's true, but it isn't the entire truth.
It's our experience, and we
Mhm.
shouldn't deny experience. It's what makes life have some meaning as well. But even with our political views, or for the sake of Christian apologetics that are debating, are we really going to be carrying that off into heaven? Are we going to be debating out there? No, certainly not. We're not going to be having our Bible verses and doing Bible battles.
Well,
That's also the material illusion. So, absolutely right again. And people just limit it to stuff. It's more than stuff. It goes
right.
deeper. And
Mhm.
that's what makes the path of spirituality harder, because there's a lot of detaching, but it's also a lot of embracing too, which doesn't get spoken of as well. So it's a duality. It's finding balance. And that's what makes Gnosticism stand out compared to, say, Buddhism, which is ultimate detachment. Here we find balance, which is pretty cool. So I like that. So you're not detaching for love just for the sake that it's a detachment of everything. It's good to experience love because that's our ultimate divine expression.
Mhm. Yes.
But it's been a wonderful. I reckon we'll end it to this one, and we can do it for part two, so I can upload it like last time. So
Mhm.
it's 20 minutes, because on the Union it's 15 minutes until that grows a bit more on
Okay.
pre-recordings. Unless we do lives, one day we'll do lives on there. But on my spiritual level, being as long as I want, which is cool.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here, David. It's been a treasure having you and speaking.
Oh no, thank you. Like I said, you guys have to forgive me. I know I can go on and on and on. Kind of, so I was trying to condense everything to the specific topic at hand. But yeah, all the viewers that may be viewing this, ask yourself that question. How am I going to go forward now and navigate these spaces of politics and voting and all these sorts of things, but still remembering that gnosis, that the spark of divinity doesn't belong to any of it, quite frankly. So so how do we, we have to navigate that.
100%. So thank you everyone for joining us here on this discussion. Blessings all.